الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد يقول الله عز وجل ولوطا إذ قال لقومه أتأتون الفاحشة ما سبقكم بها من أحد من العالمين إنكم لتأتون الرجال شهوة من دون النساء بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in these powerful verses that we sent to Lut and he said to his people, how can you practice this outrage? No one has preceded you in this. You lust after men rather than women, you transgress all bounds. In these verses are some that I find extremely important in helping us understand on how we deal with our fellow man and how we deal with others. And how sometimes relationships can become very complicated and they can become very difficult. But one of the purposes of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is helping us understand how to navigate those relationships, especially when things become extremely difficult, extremely challenging to navigate. But even in those spaces and places, He Azza wa Jal has given us guidance and He's given us a means. And the other thing that I find amazing about this verse is that historically, whether it be in the Muslim world or outside of the Muslim world, that this practice is something that many of us are aware of, even in our home countries. And I've traveled, walillahi alhamd, over a lot of the Muslim lands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me an opportunity when I was studying in Saudi, within Saudi itself. I went to Egypt, into Qatar, into Emirat, into Lebanon. I went to Pakistan a number of times. And unfortunately, in all those spaces and places, this is something that I did see and I did witness. So what is the difference? And why is it that we face such an issue here? And why does it become such a problem? Because the reality is that there's always going to be a tolerance of certain things when those things are not being pushed, when those things are not being propagated, when those things are not being called to. And we know in our own countries, in the places that we are from, that there is gambling that happens privately, the drinking of alcohol that happens privately, brothels, and zina, and unfortunately also sodomy. And if we understand that those things happen privately, and as a culture, it is not something that we accept. But why is it that we do not find, as the claim is, that they are going around and that they're being abused? And I can say, and this is something that I am proud of saying, that walillahi alhamd, as a Muslim community, whether here in the United States, we do not go around, we do not hunt, we do not abuse, we do not beat up, we do not hurt anyone because of their identity. And whether a person is homosexual or drinks or sodomizes or commits zina, I have yet to find, as a community, where we are going out and we are physically hurting or even terrorizing or verbally abusing anyone. Because this is not how Muslims operate and this is not how Muslims work. And there is statistical data to prove this. For all of the claims of human rights and discrimination, it's not happening from us. And part of the reason for that is because we don't share spaces. We don't go to clubs. Walillahi alhamd. We don't go to those spaces where we know that these deeds are being practiced. And the reverse is also true. Because we don't have tolerance for sin. At least not openly. There are things that people do privately all the time. Like we said, within the community. And unfortunately within this community. There are people who are committing zina. There are people who are using alcohol and drinking it. There are people who are using drugs. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our families. Ameen. But the question is like, yes, we know that these things are happening. But there's no witch hunt. There's nobody going around knocking on the people's doors, asking what is happening in your homes. Because Islam is not an invasive religion. We don't have a terror police that walks around and kicks people's doors down to see, are they gambling? Are they drinking alcohol? Are they committing zina? Are they lying? Are they stealing? Are they hurting others? This is not the modus operandi of the Muslims. This is not how we deal and how we speak to others. Then what is the problem? And what is the issue? And why is it a problem? Because there are some spaces that we do share. And the question is, how do we navigate those spaces? And one of the biggest issues that had happened and was happening, and unfortunately, because of what is happening to our brothers in Gaza, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid them, and may Allah azza wa jal accept their martyrs, ameen. There was a huge issue that has been overshadowed, and that is this issue of homosexuality, of sodomy, of transgenderism, even though this was the number one issue within the community. But the reality is, it's still an issue. It hasn't gone anywhere, which is quite unfortunate. And these same discussions are still happening. They're still happening in the school board. They're still happening in the school system. And it is an issue because that is now our shared space. And the question is that we as a community, how do we deal with it? And I will tell you on a personal level, I have reached out to members of the gay community. I have reached out and I've sat down with them. And I said, what is it that you guys want? What is it that you seek? What are the ways that we can actually work together? And the unfortunate reality is that as Muslims, our identity doesn't revolve around our sexuality. Our identity revolves around our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only love we care about is whether I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. And whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves me. But anyone else in any group, however they base that sexuality and how they base and identify themselves, that is not our base. And if we fundamentally differ on this issue, then it becomes that much more challenging to work with you. And there are groups who might agree with some of the things that we as Muslims believe and do. If I get an endorsement from a tobacco company that yes, we support family rights and we think families are important, or Budweiser comes to the masjid and say, hey, we want to sponsor this cookout because we think it's important for communities to come together. These things happen and they do exist, but there are certain endorsements we don't care for. There's certain endorsements we don't want because the fundamental platform that we stand on is different, even if we might agree on certain things. And the things, walillah alhamd, that we do agree on is that every human has a right to be respected and not abused. And I will say, and again proudly, that we're not doing it. Why the anger? Why this need? And if there's a claim that, well, no, we're not doing anything. Marriage is a religious concept. Marriage is a religious term. Marriage is a religious function. And you want to try to take my religious function? You want to take my religious right? You want to take my religious structure? Call it whatever you want. Why would you take my terminology? If my religion and my faith and faith in general is so unimportant, why is it so important to you? And it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينُ. I have my religion, you have yours. And for many of these individuals, it is as if it is a religion, because everything revolves around that sexuality. And it's very unfortunate. And I actually feel bad. I feel sorry that this is who you are. Walillah alhamd, I'm a Muslim. I'm a father. I'm an Imam. I'm a husband. I hope that I'm courageous. I hope that I'm hardworking. I hope that I'm honest and I'm upright. Those are my identities. What I do in my bedroom is nobody's business. But that is something you want to bring out and you want to revolve your world around that? Why? You can cry abuse. And the other thing that's very unfortunate, that many of us fail to even see or recognize, is that the biggest leaders and callers to this type of lifestyle, they treat it as if it's civil rights. The civil rights movement, people were actually being abused. They were actually being killed. They were being hung from trees. They were being hosed down. But why is this a big issue now? Because the skin color changed? How's that fair? What kind of false equivalency is this? What happened to the black Americans in no way, shape, or form can be compared to what is happening with the gay community today. Was the black community ever given this amount of power and the ability to cancel others? Were they able to, within a word, go and fill people's Twitter feed, dox people, and tell people where they live so that people would go and harass them? Did black Americans ever have that power? Do they even have that power today? Do any of us have that power today? But I'm going to cry that I'm oppressed. I'm going to cry that I'm taken advantage of. And I will say that if the only tool you have, when I come and I say to you, listen, I can't agree with you. This is not something I can accept my religion. Okay, then you're a homophobe. Then you're a transphobe. Okay, I am. Now what? Huh? Tafadal. Yes, I am. What are you going to do about it? And we have taken all their power away. The moment we accept that. Because we know the reality. And like I had said in the beginning of the khutbah, وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدِ, and something we should be proud of. Abuse, whether it be physical or verbal or otherwise, it's not happening. It's just not. And anyone who claims that is a liar. And this is something that our children are facing and they're dealing with. And it's unfortunate that within the past 10 years that we've built alliances and we've worked with them and we have causes together. And the only thing that we have taken away from these alliances and the buildings that we have done and the institutions we've created is that we've confused our children. That's it. That's all we've done. We actually haven't had any benefit from it. We haven't had any growth. It hasn't helped our institutions, hasn't helped our masajid, hasn't helped our schools. If anything, it's worked against us. And that's okay. There's some groups we just don't have to work with. Like I said, as Muslims, do we ever have an internal debate on whether we want to work with Budweiser? Should we work with Miller? Should we work with Marlboro? We don't have these discussions because there are certain fundamentals and certain lines we just don't cross. You can agree with us, and that's fine. And there are issues where I know we'll agree with you. But it doesn't mean I'm going to march in the streets with you. It doesn't mean that I'm going to allow you to host yourself here. We need to be proud of who we are. We need to be proud of what we're doing. And we need to be proud of our foundation and what we do believe in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد يقول الله عز وجل قالوا لئن لم تنتهي يا لوط لتكونن من المخرجين قالوا إني لعملكم من القالين ربي نجني وأهلي مما يعملون فنجيناه وأهله أجمعين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in these verses, but they replied, Lut, if you do not stop, you will be driven away. So he said, I loathe what you do. My Lord, Ya Rabbi, save me and my family from what they are doing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that we saved him and his family. And over here, this is the pivotal verse that helps us understand on where we draw the line. The moment imposition comes that you need to accept and that this is okay and you need to tolerate this and this is something that should be encouraged, that is where Lut drew the line, and he said, no. And like I said, we all know in our own countries, and unfortunately, some of us might even be familiar with some of the practices that happen. For those of our brothers and sisters from Afghanistan, why is it they all know what bachabazi is? Why is it for those brothers and sisters from Pakistan, they know what a hijrah is? I myself, being in Makkah, in the university, I see what's going on. When you have an all-boys school, what very naturally is going to happen? It's an unfortunate reality. But like I said, do you see these people being pelted? Do you see them being kicked and abused and killed en masse, like the claim is, because of Sharia law? Well, if it's not happening and there's a tolerance of it, then what's the issue? The issue is that we refuse to accept. Alcohol is haram. It will forever be haram. Sodomy is haram. It will forever be haram. Zina is haram. It will forever be haram. Don't come and tell me what my religion is. Don't tell me what I need to believe. And in terms of respecting, you have your boundaries, you have your space, I'm not going to hurt you. That's already happening. And imposing on us, well, you need to, this pronoun, you need to say he, she, them, sie, zer, za. You can call yourself whatever you want. That is your right as a human being. And I have no issue with that. Don't let me play along with your delusion. And some of us might ask, well, how do I deal with someone who they're clearly a man and they call themselves she? Use their name. It's as simple as that. It's tedious. I was with Khalid and I took Khalid to Khalid's car, right? It's much easier to say he, him. But the reality is like, okay, I'm not disrespecting you because I'm using your name. But I'm not going to play along with the delusion. And this is something that is known historically. That if I feel that if someone comes to me and be like, hey, listen, do you hear the radio? And I tell him, yes, I hear the radio. Have I helped him? And again, we should feel sorry. Many of these people, many of these individuals, from the gay community, from the trans community, look at their lives. And look at the abuse that some of them had gone through, whether it be sexual or physical or otherwise. It's so sad. So many of these stories. It truly is sad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children and our families, Abi. And we should feel sorry. We should feel upset that any human being would have to go through that type of treatment, so that they become so perverted and strange that they have to have these thoughts and they have to lean in that direction. And then you have a society that is encouraging people toward that. And it's amazing how for the past 2, 3, 5 years, nobody was talking about banning TikTok, even though TikTok was the greatest avenue for encouraging trans and gay behavior. When did it become a problem? It became a problem when people stopped liking Israel. That's when it became a problem. And we want to talk about political power. We want to talk about abuse. It's all plain for everyone to see. In the moment that they saw a shift and the tides turning against the Israeli government, that's when they decided, like, oh, we need to stop this. Not because society is being perverted and changed. Children are being hurt. Suicide rates are going up. No. Those weren't important enough. But now this is important. The hypocrisy. SubhanAllah. Someone had said to me once, he was like, it's important that politicians have double standards. Like, well, why is that? Otherwise, they'd have no standards at all. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May He Azza wa Jal give us tawfiq. May He Azza wa Jal allow us to help people who really need to be helped. May He Azza wa Jal make us humble. May He Azza wa Jal give shifa, give healing to all of those who are ill. May He have mercy on all of those who are past. I received 2 dua requests today specifically. One of them is for Hajira Salihi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her. And the other one was for Rashida Al-Khumaisi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her as well. Ukht Rashida was from Morocco, and Ukht Hajra was from Afghanistan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on them and all of the Muslims. We ask Him Azza wa Jal to help those who are in any type of financial hardship out of that hardship. We ask Him Azza wa Jal to help those who are in debt out of their debt. And we ask Him Azza wa Jal to raise us and gather us up in His paradise. Wa aqimus salah.